Hi everyone. Hello. Thank you for coming to this talk, and I would like to welcome you to the Camilleri Hall at the Brain and Creativity Institute. Thank you for supporting this series. There's a lot of you in the audience who actually helped me put a proposal together so we can continue this series next year and the following year. Thank you for your support. If you run to your deans, the president, the provost, just tell them how much you love this series so we can continue this. We have one more speaker scheduled for this semester. Olaf Sporn from University of Indiana will be visiting us on March 27th, and then hopefully we'll continue this next fall. And if we do get the funding, then maybe we can form a student group, or you guys will help us invite speakers to the series. Before I introduce Winter, I would like to again thank Hannah and Antonio for allowing us to use this wonderful auditorium. Winter Mason received his bachelor's in psychology from University of Pittsburgh and his PhD in social psychology and cognitive science from Indiana University. He worked as a visiting scientist at Yahoo Research in the Human Social Dynamics group from 2007 to 2011. In 2011, he started as an assistant professor at Stevens Institute of Technology. Since 2014, he has been working as a data scientist at Facebook. We're delighted to have him with us today. The topics and the research that he's doing are fascinating, and let's hope that we would get more speakers like him to come and discuss what's going on in research labs and other universities with regards to big data and human behavior. So without further ado, join me in welcoming Winter Mason.
Thank you, Morteza. And I just want to say, so Olaf Sporns was on my dissertation committee. He's an excellent speaker and does really fascinating research, so I'm sure the next one will be excellent too. So I'm going to plug the next one for you as well. Hopefully as good as this one. This is I'm going to be talking today about a research project that I did in collaboration with Funda Kivrin-Swain, Maura Burke, and Lada Adamic, all of whom are researchers at Facebook, but also all of whom have very strong academic backgrounds. And this project sort of arose because we were interested in how people express emotions on Facebook generally. And Thanksgiving was rolling around, and I said, hey, why don't we focus on thankfulness and the expression of thankfulness? And so that's how this project got started. When looking at the literature on gratitude, I feel like there are two main themes. The first is this very direct expression of gratitude where somebody gives you a gift, somebody does something kind to you, and you feel grateful for that act. And so it's this very one-on-one sort of directed feeling of gratitude. And then there's another type of gratitude that's been studied, which is dispositional gratitude, or gratitude as outlook. And so this is the idea that we can just be thankful for the things in our lives. It's not necessarily that you're specifically thanking somebody or feeling grateful to a particular person, but just that you are feeling grateful in general. So back in 1968, one of the original studies on gratitude looked at sort of the factors that led to feeling grateful for something in the context of receiving a benefit. So there's somebody that has given you some sort of benefit, they're this benefactor. What is it that makes you feel grateful, or just sort of take it and say, hey, thanks, and walk on, right? When the barista gives you your coffee in the morning, you might say thanks, but it might not inspire deep feelings of gratitude, right? And so they identified three key factors. One was the perceived intention, and so if somebody is giving you something but you think that they have an ulterior motive, you might not feel as grateful as you would otherwise. The cost to the benefactor is a second factor that they identified, and so this is, how much is this person going out of their way to give you this benefit? And then the third is the value of the benefit. And this was characterized in this original study in a very sort of cold or mechanical way, but one can think of this as subjective value, and then it becomes much more diverse. And so, but again, this study was focused on gratitude in this dyadic sort of exchange format of gratitude. And in fact, this sort of spawned the idea that gratitude might be a driver of altruism and reciprocal altruism. Now, as psychologists, you may or may not be aware of this economic puzzle where when you talk about like fully rational homo economicus, like fully rational individuals, there's this question of why people are altruistic. The classic prisoner's dilemma studies show that, illustrate that the rational choice is to always defect, like cooperation is not a stable equilibrium, and therefore it's sort of this question of how did pro-social behavior arise? And in fact, there's been 40 years of research trying to explain why people are actually kind to one another, right? From a rational perspective. And some researchers have taken the idea of gratitude and the feeling of gratitude as maybe this evolved mechanism that will allow people to sort of foster these social relationships that allow for this altruism, that allow for this kindness, and still be rational, right? So on one extreme, you might have the sort of idea where I give you a gift, and what you give me in exchange is the feeling of gratefulness and the appreciation, right? So we actually do have this like purely economic rational exchange. It's just that the thing that you are giving me is this feeling of thankfulness and that sort of thing. On a sort of less cold analytic view of it, you can say that the purpose of the feeling of gratitude is to nurture these social relationships so that you are actually forming a bond with this person through this pro-social interaction that is actually going to increase the bond between both the benefactor and the recipient. So the person giving feels close to the person that they have given to, and vice versa. And I'm going to sort of expand on this one in a little bit, but right now. So basically, the idea is that by having this feeling of gratitude, you're reinforcing the behavior from the source. So the person that is giving you the thing, you're reinforcing their behavior through this gratitude. You're also establishing this sort of indirect reciprocity. So I'm going to give you something, I feel thankful. Later on, I'm going to give you something because I feel thankful. In fact, there is other research that shows that when you feel grateful, the more grateful you feel, the more likely you are to then go back and try to and be generous to that person and to give that person something. So it actually does foster this reciprocity. But it also is this relationship builder. So it increases feeling of closeness, of bonding. There was a recent study in which they looked at this big sister, little sister in a sorority where the big sister was sort of like a secret Santa to the little sister. And so there was this like kind of semi-forced gift giving, but it resulted in this increased, years later, it resulted in this increased bond between the big sister and the little sister, and that was related to the feelings of gratefulness associated with the gift. So all of this research has really been focused on, that I've talked about so far, has been focused on this very dyadic, this very exchange-based feeling of gratitude. You have received something from somebody and you are thankful about it. But there's another line of research where that looks at gratitude as a source of well-being. Okay, and so there's this study from Emmons and McCullough, and both of these two have done extensive research from a positive psychology perspective, looking at the benefits of being grateful generally, of being measuring how to identify people that are dispositionally grateful, and doing things to try to enforce a gratitude outlook on people. And showing that this can positively impact subjective well-being. One of their studies was actually looking at people that had neuromuscular disorder. And so these people were ill. They had a lot of hardships from this disease. And so they had an intervention with some of them in which they asked them to every day, indicate the things that they were thankful for. And they found that, it didn't affect sort of their experienced pain. It didn't affect the actual physical symptoms or anything like that. But they got better sleep. They felt better about life. Their happiness scores were higher. So by enforcing or encouraging this outlook of just general thankfulness, count your blessings, they found that this actually did sort of improve the quality of life for these patients. And in fact, there's a good bit of research that they've done that shows that this can just generally impact your long-term well-being. So this is sort of the background. And one thing that I noticed that was not really available here, that was not really in the literature, and in large part because of the difficulty of doing this sort of research, is how people naturally sort of spontaneously express gratitude, right? And so that was sort of the focus of this research project, is in a context where people are free to express whatever they want to a very large degree, how do they naturally express these feelings of gratitude? Are there certain people that are more likely than others to express gratitude? And when they do this, what are they focusing on? What are the things that they find to be thankful for? And so I'm going to drill into these questions using Facebook data, which I will talk about in a moment. And we're also going to look at how the things that people are focused on and the people that are expressing gratitude changes when they're actually specifically being challenged to be grateful. And so this is sort of like, essentially there was a natural experiment of sorts in which that replicates the Emmons and McCullough study, right, in which people actually were challenged to report what they were thankful for on a daily basis. And so since this is the big data speaker series, this is the point where I'm going to just emphasize the point that this is possible because of big data, right? So understanding how people are expressing their thankfulness sort of spontaneously in the wild is difficult if you don't have access to these free forms of expression and recorded expression. And so having access to Facebook or Twitter or any of these sort of large public corpuses of data sets gives the opportunity to study how this happens naturally, organically, in a way that wasn't really possible before. And I would argue that doing this sort of research in conjunction with the sorts of research that I just talked about is actually a very good way to match the empirical lab studies with what is effectively an observational field study. And so today I'm talking about the observational field study. So the way that we did this, when you write a status update on Facebook, you have the option of adding, you click this button and you can say that you are experiencing, you can say that you're feeling thankful or you're feeling happy or excited. You can also say that you're eating lunch or you're reading a book. There's a lot of things that you can do with this. We call them minutia, so if I accidentally use that word, that's what I'm referring to, because it doesn't apply outside of Facebook. But and so what we did is we looked at the status updates that were tagged with feeling blank. And so we collected 17.6 million status updates from 8.6 million people. And they could choose between 270 predefined feelings. You also have the option of entering in your own feeling, free form, but we focused on the predefined ones because we wanted to have an equivalent comparison set, effectively. And so all of this data I never saw anything about the people. It's all been aggregated. We aggregated over demographics. We did automatic text processing to extract information about them without actually seeing the status updates. So this is all the analysis is all happening at a very abstract level. So this is, so you'll have to, everybody turn your head to the left. Okay, so this is the top 50 most common feelings from the list of 270. And one of the things that stands out right away is that feeling blessed is the number one, right? It's the number one most common. Oh, I forgot to say, or did I? Yes, I did. I forgot to say. This is all English in the US updates. We started looking at international because, in fact, there are these feeling blank in all different languages. But that became excessively complicated, and so we just stuck with English in the US. So at least within the US, the number one feeling that was expressed was feeling blessed. And only short number 5 away is feeling thankful, right? So when people are expressing their feelings on Facebook, this feeling of gratitude is actually surprisingly common. So the ones that, the green bars are the ones that we are looking at specifically as that we're saying are expressions of gratitude. So it's grateful, thankful, and blessed. And I'll do a little bit of diving in terms of how those are different. You can also see that, most of the top 5 are all positive emotions, blessed, excited, happy, loved, thankful, and thankful. And then you have annoyed and sad, so it's not all positive. Just putting that out there. We wanted to look at gender differences because in the literature there's been some suggestion that women are maybe more likely to express gratitude. We found that, but to a very, very small degree. Okay. Now, a point here about which, if you've been to the speaker series before, I'm sure somebody else has mentioned this. When you're dealing with very large data sets, p-values are meaningless. The important thing is the effect size. So everything is significant when you're looking at 17 million status updates. And so the effect size here is very small. So women are expressing more, but the effect size is very small. And in fact, when you look at thankful, men are expressing more than women. So this bar on the left is taken across both blessed, thankful, and grateful. And you can see that across all of them, women are expressing more, but that's largely driven by the usage of blessed. It's also important to note that this is about the expression and not necessarily the experienced feeling, of course, right? So this is what people are actually saying on Facebook and not necessarily, what they're feeling. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Yeah.
Quick question. What does blessed mean? Like, is it a religious thing? What are they referring to?
So the way that it's used is actually really just an expression of gratitude, right? And I'll explain that in a moment. For instance, I've got such a loving husband, I'm feeling blessed, right? This is, this is from my own personal feed. This is how I get examples. There was another one that was like, right, I just got this, like, I just got a new car or something like that, I'm feeling blessed. So it's, yeah.
Are religious people more likely to use those than non-religious?
We'll get back to that. Yeah.
Yeah, just 2 clarifications on how this happens. So these are only when people decide that they want to put one of these kind of descriptors there. What proportion of all things that you look at have them? And then the second part is, having never done that, there are a lot of descriptors. How are they presented? Are they randomized each time? Is it a list? So are there order effects here?
Good question. So actually using minutia is relatively rare occurrence. I don't remember the exact percentage. I want to say that it's like 5% or less of all status updates have this. Amongst all of the ones where they have a feeling one, the thankful ones, of these three account for 15% of them. And then when you go to the composer, let me see. Yeah. So when you go to the composer and you click on this button, it first gives you a menu that says feel, read, eat, right? So the higher level, like feeling part. And then you go there and you see a list. And that list is definitely ordered. So there's possibly order effects. But I believe that the order is based on sort of based on like the frequency with which they've been used in general and your personal usage. To be honest, like the ranking of those it's not alphabetical, and I'm not clear on what it is. But it is entirely possible that there's at least order effects with respect to the popularity of these, right? For sure. Yeah, but I know that it's also not always the one at the top that's the same, so it's not going to be like a huge ordering effect. But that's a very good question. Just to be clear, what we're looking at here is so what this red bar means is that of all feeling minutiae that were used, women used thankful one about 14% of the time. Right, so that's what the proportion is referring to. And so this is really one thing that I didn't show here, but is very true, is that women are actually using they use feeling, like just a feeling minutia at all, about 86% more 86% more than men. No, that's it. 86% of all like feeling minutia are given by women, right? And of the feeling minutia, about and so women are way more likely to use any of these feeling minutia than men. But given that they've used a feeling minutia, the probability that they use a blessed, oh no, of course. Okay, thank you. The probability that they chose blessed out of all of those 270 is about 10%. So using the same sort of logic, here we're looking at age. And this I thought was really interesting to me. So the green ones are the thankful ones, and the green line at the top is just across all of the blessed, grateful, and thankful minutia. Happy, also increases with age. So all of these thankful ones, people are getting more thankful as they get older, or they're more likely to use a thankful status update as they get older. Happy, they become less likely to use it once, as they approach adulthood, and then slowly they come back and use happy more. Whereas excited, you see a decline and then it just sort of flattens out, right? So you're most likely to be excited when you're, 14. But we all knew that already, right? But I think it's pretty interesting that and I don't know of any literature that's specifically focused on gratitude with respect to age, but I think it's kind of interesting that there is this just general increase. And when we get to the challenge, I'll talk about how those, what people are thankful for also changes with age. So this one, basically this is friend count. So how many Facebook friends do you have? And what I kind of thought might happen was that as you have more friends, you're more likely to express your thankfulness on Facebook, right? But in fact, it's this unusual, like inverse U-shaped. So, one possible implication, and this is very cursory at this point, so here's a grain of salt for you. It could be that there's a particular audience size in which you feel comfortable expressing the gratitude, right? Maybe it's too small and you don't really feel like you have something that you want to express. Maybe it's too big and you feel like it'll be lost in the noise, but if you have the right audience size, then you're going to express it. We also see that for excited, though, so it's unclear. Maybe it's just using feeling minutia in general.
What about the negative emotions? Do you see the same emotion?
So negative emotions, so I only looked at sad, and for sad, basically you are way more likely if you have very few friends, and then it just becomes flat the more friends you have. Yeah.
What's the distribution of people that actually come up with these free-floating expressions of gratitude? So I have a few friends that early saying the Pollyannish, how wonderful life is, and I'm tempted to unfriend them because it's so boring. But, so does one see this as kind of a rectangular distribution over all the Facebook participants that you sampled, or is it just a small subset of people that are emitting these expressions?
So in general, so the usage of the status update with the minutia with the feeling is very rare, as I was saying before, and so the people that tend to use them are kind of heavy Facebook users. They're on the site a lot. They're very active. They tend to have more friends, but not exclusively. Just generally very engaged users. I didn't specifically look at the demographics of people using minutia in general versus the rest of the Facebook population.
Or as a percent, so what percent of the people are generating this? Would you?
Right. So it's like less than 5%. Probably. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I would say it's probably somewhere between 2 and 3%, if I were to guess.
I have a question about the happy data,
Mm-hmm.
which you have distinctly linear. Is that indicating that the people, a smaller subset of friends are happier? Well, two questions. One is, does the happy posting reflect the person's general happiness? Are they happier people the more they post happiness? And then second is the linear effect just for happy, which is distinct from the others. Is that being driven by you have a small set of close friends, and whereas when you have 500 friends, you don't have that?
I don't know. My suspicion is that it has more to do with audience effects. And so the idea that when you say that you are feeling happy, it's more likely to receive feedback. That would be my guess as to what drives this. I certainly would be very reluctant to say that how closely this is related to whether they're happy people or not. Because there's especially for positive emotions, people tend to express when they feel it. For negative emotions, there's a lot of self-censoring in terms of whether they're likely to use it. But I don't know. It's a good question. Okay, so speaking of feedback, I'll use that as a transition. So this is looking at the average likes. So given that you used one of these minutia, one of these feelings, how many likes did that post tend to get? That's what I'm looking at here, and you can see that the thankful ones are receiving significantly more likes than the other positive emotion ones, particularly blessed and grateful, and happy is actually less likely to get likes. And so, getting back to your question, I think that it could very well be that you're more likely to get likes when you have a small audience, and so that's going to drive the mechanism there. But this is obviously part of this is actually, so I've been focused on sort of the gratitude as a disposition perspective on this. That's sort of how I think people are using this status update. But I think that there's obviously some, social feedback and some social support that's coming when you express this. And in fact, this is the number of comments, and comments are are a much stronger signal of social support from your social network than likes are. Likes are sort of, much more lightweight. Obviously, they're cheaper to do. So when it comes to the cost of the benefactor, right, when you're talking about like, how people are experiencing the feedback, comments are going to be a lot more meaningful. And it's interesting that, here they're sort of in the middle of the pack. And in fact, when we look at, this is the average likes for the top 10 most liked feelings, right? And you see that, one, that all of the thankful expressions are here, or in the top 10 most liked. But you also see that there's, except for old, which is maybe an outlier, that the rest are very much like sort of expressions of pride, of accomplishment, of having done something great, right? So it's interesting that the thankful ones are falling in with these, in terms of the feedback received, right? So when you say that you're proud, ecstatic, you're really talking about your accomplishments. When you're saying that you're grateful, right, it's possible, and in fact, this is also anecdotally, there's some evidence for this, that the usage of these is a little bit like a humble brag, okay, if you're familiar with that term, right? So I am so blessed to have been able to go on this expensive vacation, right? Or, I'm so thankful that I got this, that I have this wonderful husband or whatever, right? So these are things where you're saying that you're thankful, but you're also at the same time expressing some pride and some like accomplishment and that sort of thing.
Is it more useful to use average instead? Did you look at the distribution of the likes?
You're right that they do tend to have a skewed distribution. If you look at median, the variability between them is less, but the pattern remains the same. Yeah.
When doing this kind of like average number of likes, do you consider how many of their friends have seen the post or not? Because I'm not sure if like the newsfeed algorithm considers these feelings usually.
So no, I'm not actually looking at, I'm not conditioning on whether, on the distribution of these, because frankly, that's an extremely difficult calculation to do. But at the same time, I am skeptical that the newsfeed ranking algorithm would actually favor one particular minutia over another. And since that's my standard of comparison, I feel like they're at least going to be on kind of common ground. That's definitely a possible bias in the data, for sure. Okay, so this is the top most liked feelings. And by the way, I'm going to go a little bit, I'm digressing a little bit here. So these are the bottom, right? These are the least liked, right? And one of the things that's sort of interesting here to me is that it's all negative, and that's sort of unsurprising, right? It's kind of not a social norm to like it when somebody says, oh, this terrible thing happened to me, right? But what's interesting here is that the least liked here are actually sort of complaints against the social network, right? So I'm feeling invisible and ignored and unimportant and neglected, right? Like these are the ones where it's, there's really like, I'm feeling bad and it's your fault, right? Which I think it's an interesting and sort of, to some degree, validating idea that people are using these as a way of expressing their feelings to their social network. So this is the most commented, and again, the thankful ones don't appear here, right? So the ones that receive the most comments are not the thankful ones. The thankful ones are like, hey, great for you, that's excellent. Here, we're seeing a lot of negative ones too, but the comments, most likely in this case, are actually coming as social support, right? So I'm worried, I'm nervous, I'm heartbroken. So people are coming in and actually using the Facebook comments as a form of social support in this case. Old, okay. It's liked and commented on. Probably because it's this mixture of, I'm just, put a diaper on my kid for the first time, I'm feeling old, right? Oh, I'm gonna like that, right? Or, oh man, my hip is hurting, I'm feeling old, and then people are gonna comment on that and provide social support. And then the ones that receive the least comments are these very internally focused updates, right? I'm feeling sleepy, I'm feeling cozy. It's like, you don't really have much to say for that, right? It's just like, okay, you go do that. Okay, so that was a digression. I'll loop that back in. Okay, so in this next part, what we did is we took all of the text associated with these status updates that included the feeling whatever, and we did some text processing. So we stemmed the things, we removed stop words, and then we did topic analysis. And so we used latent Dirichlet allocation (LDA) to generate topics, given some parameters that made sensible clusters. And then I did some tea leaf reading to interpret what these clusters mean, and then hand labeled them and came up with this list. And so when we look at feeling blessed, the number one topic was birthday. Okay, and so this was confusing, and I actually had to do a little bit of digging to figure out what this was about. And then once I saw it, it was obvious. The Facebook birthday, saying happy birthday on Facebook is like one of the most common posts on Facebook at all, right? So it's somebody's birthday, and suddenly everybody that you haven't heard from in 20 years is coming in and wishing you a happy birthday because Facebook said, hey, it's your birthday, right? Well, once you've received, 200 comments or 200, updates from people saying, hey, happy birthday, you kind of want to express some thankfulness, right? So this is actually this reciprocal gratitude going on here. And so people then will post a status update on the day after their birthday and say, I'm feeling blessed to have so many friends that love me and wish me a happy birthday, right? So this is why that popped up first. Dios obviously is a religious thing, so getting back to that point. And then the fourth one, God, right? So I thought about combining these two into one, but there was a lot of Spanish language stuff that crept into the English US status updates because there's a lot of bilingual people. The morning, this was something that I thought was pretty interesting. So a lot of people say when they wake up, it's like, oh, it's a really great morning. I've had a really great morning. I'm feeling blessed. The occasion was referring to, oh, that was a great party. That was a great event that I went to. I had that was a wonderful wedding, whatever. And so that's something. A couple more things that I want to point out. So new job. This was actually, there was enough people posting about getting a new job and saying, I'm feeling blessed, that it formed its own cluster. So people are very interested, that's a very important topic to them. And the second thing that I want to point out is that children and friends and family appear there. So people are talking about their friends and family and talking about their children. But it's not as high up there as, for instance, God and that sort of thing. Now, one thing, so I sort of expected God, because it's feeling blessed, and blessed does have this sort of religious connotation, I expected that to be sort of the top. When we look at thankful, God is at the top. And so I don't know whether this is, some maybe thankful is just maybe it's used differently. Maybe people have co-opted blessed to become less religious, and it's become a different meaning. I'm not entirely sure. Yet again, we're seeing people are thankful for having good mornings, and then comes the birthday. I'm thankful for all of my friends that wish me a happy birthday. Yet again, you see new job is up there, as well as work. So people are actually, and maybe it's the economy, but people are thankful to have their jobs and thankful to have new jobs. And again, friends and family and children are sort of topics here. And one thing that's interesting, and this only appeared as a cluster in the thankful updates, is receiving help. So thank you for doing this thing. I'm thankful that this person helped me move. I'm thankful that this person did something for me. And so one of the things that I think is interesting is that we're seeing both the sort of reciprocity type gratitude and the just general thankful for my life and thankful for a good morning types of updates. Grateful, children appear, friends and family do appear, but it's not in the top 10, which is what's here. And God and religion. So grateful is sort of similar to the others, slightly more diverse, pretty much the same. Okay, so that's sort of the topics. We also looked at, so as I mentioned, there's this sort of like the intervention in the Emmons and McCullough study. People were asked, they would nominate a friend and say, friend Mary, I'm challenging you to, over the next 5 days, every day list 3 things that you're thankful for, right? And this was sort of interesting to us because as opposed to the minutia and this just, you can post this update saying you're thankful at any point in time. One, this is, you're being specifically challenged by a specific friend. And 2, you're listing them. So they're like actually very concrete things. And in fact, as opposed to having to do topic analysis when we wanted to look at what people were thankful for, we could actually just extract the phrases and do some very simple text analysis on it. And so we're going to ask, how is this different than the unsolicited expressions? And so again, this is like, we looked for status updates that included gratitude challenge or thankful challenge and included end days because those were common to all of the gratitude expressions. And then we look at these trends that I will talk about. So one thing that was interesting, so just like the spontaneous expressions of gratitude, in which, or just feeling in general, women were, 80% of the expressions were from women. In this case, 9% of the people that participated were women. And to some extent, women are more likely to participate in memes, but it was definitely true that they participated more in this one. So when we look at the lists, we have this much more easier to pull out topics, and what we find is family and friends are appearing way more often and way more frequently. And one possible reason for this, of course, we're seeing children, we're seeing family and friends, we're seeing friends. One possible reason why it's so much more frequent here is because it's in the context of social influence, right? You have somebody that has specifically nominated you, a friend that you're specifically connected with that has said, what are you thankful for? Probably very close to the top of your mind is going to be, oh, my friends and family, the people that have nominated me, the people that are close and around me, that sort of thing. One thing that's interesting is that the health and the roof over my head, right? So these are things that were, very like core needs. Like if you want to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? These are the stuff that sort of appears more on the bottom, and we didn't really see that in the spontaneous expressions, right? And it's possible that being specifically challenged caused people to really think about what is it that we are thankful for. Right? What are those things that are very core as opposed to the spontaneous expressions, which is more like, in which you might not necessarily be thinking about those like very basic things that you want to be thankful for. And again, we see life and job as common expressions, common topics of gratefulness, gratitude. So this was sort of interesting when we broke it out in terms of what the women versus the men. And again, remember that men accounted for only 10% of the respondents in this challenge. We see, so the blue bars are again things related to family or friends. So for women, it's husband and children, husband, boyfriend, babies, fur babies, sister-in-law, boys, right? Like so the family members are like, you know, way up there. Where, yeah, the non-family ones are wine, comfy bed, and the health of my children. Whereas for men, it's like, okay, the wife. Probably because she's the one that nominated him, right? Or the girlfriend, because those are the only ones that appear, right, in terms of friends and family. But what's interesting is that the next ones, the next most common ones are sobriety and recovery, right? And so we expect that we sort of interpret this to mean that the guys that were more likely to participate in the challenge, right, that we're going to like accept the challenge and do this in the first place, are guys that are already focused on thankfulness and gratitude, i.e. recovering alcoholics, right? So sobriety and recovery. And then, of course, you have the things that you would expect, like football and the internet, right? And salvation, that's correct, yes. I actually think that might also be tied to the sobriety and recovery, honestly, you know, 10-step program and whatnot. We also, so what we did here, this map requires some explaining. Okay, so what we did is, of all of the topics listed, what topic is most distinctive for a particular state? This is not the most common one in the state, because the most common one in every state was basically the same, right? This is the one that, which phrase best predicts, which topic best predicts that it came from Texas, right? And the answer to that is the ring. Okay. So we see some patterns here, right? So actually, a number of these were related to the weather, right? So rainbows in Hawaii, I love that one. Right? They're thankful for rainbows. Thunderstorms in the Midwest. This is actually this is a timing issue, right? So this challenge, the time period in which we collected this challenge, coincided with this. It was during the summer, and it coincided with this period where the Midwest was really getting hit with like severe thunderstorms and rain. And so actually people were grateful for that, with the exception of Michigan, which is thankful for electricity. Because they had a huge power outage that actually, you know, caused them to lose their electricity as a result of these storms. So, okay, so some of this is definitely sort of temporal. We also see a lot of the religious expression, right? So when people are listing the things that they're thankful for, particularly in what is commonly called the Bible Belt, right? You're seeing a lot of thankfulness for mercy and God's love and salvation. And West Virginia is God's forgiveness. I don't know. Another thing that sort of was interesting in terms of the things that popped out was that like actually people are thankful for social media, right? So Kansas is that Kansas? Yeah. Is thankful for Google. Of course, they also have the Google Fiber project, so that might have something to do with it. YouTube. All right, Pinterest. Vermont is Pinterest. Again, most of the participants in this were women. Okay. Okay. So we also so I had looked at the frequency of spontaneous gratitude expressions by age, right? And we saw that went up by age. Here, what we're looking at. So what this shows is that the majority. So the overall distribution represents how frequently they participated in the challenge at all, right? So the majority of people that participated in the challenge were between the age of 30 and 45, 33 and 45. So these are mostly middle-aged women or younger, I guess not quite middle-aged women participating in the challenge. And then this is just proportionate at that age group, right? So I've just expanded this into a proportion thing. And so what we see here, there's a couple of things that are really interesting to me. So one is Job, of course, comes in around maybe 18, and people start being thankful for their job around then. And that sort of persists all the way into retirement. So that's like as long as you are of a working age, there's a chance that you're going to be expressing gratefulness that you have the job. The family is this blacker bar in the middle, and it's much bigger when you're younger and sort of stabilizes as you get older. The slightly lighter but still dark green bar above that is husband and children. So and husband and then children, and so that makes sense because generally people aren't getting married or having kids until later in life. Same thing with the other relatives. A big point here, though, is everything that is in the blue spectrum here is family or friends, right? Friends are the bottom, the big bar. So that is absolutely something that people are thankful for across all age groups. But also just that family and friends represent such a substantial portion of what people are saying they're thankful for. We also looked at, so there was, as I said, it was like you're nominated. There was actually a 5-day and a 7-day challenge. The meme sort of like mutated along the way. And we see that like on the first day, there's a lot more of this being thankful for husband and family on the first day. So even though those aren't as popular, aren't as highly ranked, they tend to come first, right? So they tend to be the first thing that people say. And then even though they're not as the most common topics. Job tends to come second or third, right? Friends are like huge, but they don't actually come in until after the first day also. So in terms of what's receiving feedback, so this is the most liked topics. It's interesting that it's the men's topics that tend to receive the most likes. So sobriety, recovery, wife, girlfriend, right? Those are the ones that are receiving the most likes. And then the husband and some other topics come in afterwards, and there's a long tail that's not shown here. Good. So basically, when we're comparing the topics between the meme and the spontaneous expression, as I already mentioned, family and friends appear way more often in the meme. Health also appears in the meme in the challenge, right? So again, these sort of like fundamental bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy tend to come up when you're specifically challenged to think about it. And it's interesting to think about how that might play into the research on gratitude and well-being. If when you're specifically asked, you're coming up with different things than what you might come up with spontaneously, then maybe it is those things that you're thinking of are more important in terms of the effect on well-being. We see work and jobs appearing in both, so people know that's something that they specifically think about and spontaneously think about. And then religion happens more often, so being thankful for God and that sort of thing actually happened much more often in the spontaneous expression than it did when you were specifically challenged. Okay. So just wanted to point out some limitations here. So again, expressing your thankfulness on Facebook is necessarily at least a semi-public forum. And so this is going to affect what is shared, who is sharing. And so this is just as much, the research that I just presented is just as much a study of how people express gratitude. Generally, it is just as much a study of how people are likely to express it in a public forum as it is like what people might be thankful for in general. I would argue that the topics and the things that people are thankful for, given the audience, it's like once you've been challenged, once you've decided that you want to express this, that's actually going to be the things that you are thankful for. But the fact that you're choosing to express it might be different. And so therefore, the people who are sharing might be probably a biased population. And we're also we're not looking at any sort of directed communication, right? So there's not any of this. We're missing probably a lot of this very genuine, like, hey, I wanted to message you specifically and say thank you for this thing, which is why most of what we're catching is probably of that more dispositional, I'm thankful for my life type of thing. So there's evidence in research on emotional communication generally that this emotional communication can benefit both the person that is expressing the emotion, that is expressing how they're feeling, as well as the person hearing it. So it actually can benefit both people. And the expression of gratitude in particular has been shown to foster relationships. And therefore, one of the reasons that this is interesting to Facebook is because it could be, and in fact seems likely, that encouraging people to express their thankfulness might actually facilitate stronger or deeper friendships between the person and their friends on Facebook. So, thank you.
Time for maybe 2 questions? No question.
Do you get at or try and look at all of the ironic uses of glasses?
Irony is very hard to automatically extract. So no.
Just enough of a logical question. So when you're doing the message aggregation and topic modeling, are you using the perspective of the message or the user? So I assume that there's no weighting of some users who are posting way more versus some that are posting less, and how that affects the topic modeling.
So in a lot of cases, the distribution of posting is highly skewed. If you look at across posts in general on Facebook, right, it's highly skewed, right? Conditioning on using minutia at all, right? Conditioned on using a feeling blank at all, the distribution is much less skewed. And so it's still there's still some skew, but it's not nearly as bad. And so I made the choice. I started actually doing the analysis at a user level. And then when I noticed that it wasn't as skewed as everything else, I decided to just do it at the update level. So there's going to be some bias absolutely towards the people that are expressing more, and that's a good point. But because it wasn't as biased as it usually is, I felt like it was relatively safe to do that.
Thank you.